been hooked on that for about the last 5 weeks.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to the Eileen John Deere Foley Council Chambers for the meeting of the Portsmouth City Council on Monday, November 22nd, 2010. Unfortunately, our mayor is sick this evening. He's got a bad cold, so he won't be here. Hopefully he's watching us on TV. But I would like to welcome everyone that's here in the chamber and everyone watching at home. And in case you tune out early or leave early, we'd like to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great holiday. Before we begin, I would like to thank the council and the great staff we have in Portsmouth for attending our all-day retreat on Saturday. We were at the Portsmouth Public Library for 8 hours discussing all kinds of issues pertinent to the city. So it was a very productive and effective meeting, and I want to thank the council and our staff, our great staff, for being there all day Saturday. It was a long day. With that, I would like to call the meeting to order, which I did, and ask the city clerk, Valerie French, assistant city clerk, to take the roll call.
Mayor Farini is absent this evening. Assistant Mayor Nobeline Clayburgh.
Here.
Councilor Lister.
Here.
Councilor Hijmonic.
Here.
Councilor Spear.
Here.
Councilor Dwyer.
Here.
Councilor Coviello.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here.
8 present, Your Honor.
Okay, could we all stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance by City Councilor Ken Smith?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the acceptance of minutes. We have October 18th, 2010 minutes. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have to accept minutes for November 8th, 2010 meeting of the Portsmouth City Council. Do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
accept? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion accepted. Next, we go to the public comment session. We have 4 speakers who have signed up, and I think you are probably all familiar with the rules. City Attorney Sullivan, correct me if I make a mistake. You have 3 minutes to speak. Attorney Sullivan will hold up signs to alert you to the time left and a final sign that says thank you very much.
After 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it'll be white. At the end of your time, it will be red.
Okay, our first speaker is Peter Bresciani about assessments.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving and hope it's a safe one. Speaking on assessments, I'm going to read from you verbatim from the Assessing Referral Manual, Section 9.1, Property Record Card, Site Information. Every feature of the property may not be fully described on the card. Most tax assessors utilize codes to describe property features. Codes are not an attempt to confuse the reader or to confound the taxpayer, but are used to economize the valuable space on the PRC. A successful assessing office will have these codes readily available to anyone who reads or solicits a copy of the card. It is important to understand that what might seem like common sense to the tax assessor can be confusing to the taxpayer. A revaluation manual should be made available that will describe all of the factors and features and the manner in which the values were estimated. A complete understanding of how the values was developed may require reference to the manual, especially for unusual properties. And transparency in the process of developing assessed value inspires confidence in the system. When a taxpayer can see how the value was developed, the assessment becomes more credible. And speaking of the codes, from 1994 to 2000, we used Patriot Properties tax cards. All the information that was needed was on the front of the card. Flip it over, there's all the codes. You want to know how it was calculated? It's on the tax card, showing you how it was calculated. From 2000 to 2010, we used TLC cards, and now we're switching to the Verizon cards. Third new system. You may want to match your 2006 TLC card and your new Verizon card to see if you're being assessed correctly and fairly. Vision has added 1,588 square feet to my house and reduced my backyard from 25,504 square feet to 1 square foot. Just a side note, the letter requesting the city publish the Vision property cards online. I think you need to really take a really hard look at that and see if you're going to get the bang for the dollar. I've looked at 10 cities, and I don't think it's worth it. There's not enough information on it to do diddly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bresciano. The next speaker is Bob Hasselt regarding parking.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Hasselt, 15 Mount Vernon Street. I am here this evening in support of increasing the holiday parking to 3 weeks, beginning December 13th through January 2nd. Relatives and friends visit our city to enjoy the holidays that continue up to New Year's, and this would be a friendly gesture. Thank you for considering the idea. Natalie and I were in Maryland a few weeks ago and happened to stop at Annapolis. We drove into downtown to walk around and enjoy some great steamed oysters and clams. We found a parking space, went to a meter, and this is what the instructions said. 25 cents for every 15 minutes, 2-hour limit. Planning on being longer? Please consider using the parking garage located at. This, to me, and many people using the meters, is a lot easier to calculate than 75 cents an hour. They may only want 15 or 30 minutes, and besides, when it's dark out, it's almost impossible to read the directions or instructions, whatever you want to call it. My suggestion is to use 25 cents for every 15 minutes, idea which, by the way, amounts to $1 an hour, and leave the garage at 75 cents. In addition, it would be helpful to have a note on the meter that if you are staying longer than 2 hours, please use the parking garage at Hanover Street at 75 cents an hour. This may entice workers to also use the garage rather than parking on the street and getting tickets. An observation over the years and having a business downtown is that most visitors and some locals do not read the info on the meters and therefore drop coins in on holidays and Sundays. A very nice gift and revenue to the city. It would be interesting to know how much this really amounts to. Please consider my suggestions, and thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving with your family and friends.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Bill St. Laurent, regarding committees.
Good evening, Assistant Mayor, City Councilors. Bill St. Laurent, 253 Colonial Drive. Just here to bring up a few issues that I haven't seen happening in the city, and I've heard the City Council talk about. And one of them is with contracts. There was supposed to be somewhat of you were supposed to meet and come up with some kind of maybe a public discussion before contracts were signed and give the public at least a week before you voted for them. And I haven't heard anything, or we haven't heard anything more about that particular issue that you had brought up, or was brought up one evening by the mayor. The other thing is, I was glad to see the council starting into the budget and the recommendations that came out, and we were hoping that that would start soon, and that you would get into it as soon as possible, and you sounds like you have been, according to what I'm reading in the paper. The other thing that I'm looking at that we haven't heard anything, it was just casually mentioned, was the Charter Commission. It's been a 10-year process now, and we haven't heard any more about whether you're going to set up one or not. The Taxpayers Association would like to see one set up because the last time in 2000 you really didn't have a commission. You had a group. You had people meet and just kind of go over the charter and come up with some suggestions. But I think we ought to have a full-blown charter commission. So it's been 20 years now, and go over what's in our charter. So I would recommend that you set up this commission, which is supposed to be done every 10 years. The other thing was, since we're hearing so much on the assessments, and it was such a problem on the assessments, even mentioned tonight, talked by Mr. Braciano, maybe it might be a good idea, because there is so much confusion going on, that maybe a blue ribbon committee be set up to work on this, to maybe people could address or come to and have the assessor on the committee. I know it's a lot more work for her, but you know, really there's no place for the people to turn to other than the assessor's office, and they're pretty busy in there. So that might be a good idea, maybe to set up some kind of a committee for assessments, so that the people will have some place to go to. That's about it. That's kind of reminders of committees that I haven't heard of and wonder when they're going to come up, and hopefully they will come up soon. And I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving and a pleasant time, and have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our final speaker is Marianne McQuillan from about sidewalk snow plowing. I'm sorry, did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Mary Lou McElwain, 259 South Street. And yes, I am here to talk about sidewalk snow plowing, because it's going to happen this winter. I think that Portsmouth is a wonderful, walkable city. However, for about 4 months of the year, it isn't. And you know, I walk a lot, so I can tell you from South Street to Newcastle Avenue to Dennett to Islington that there is inconsistent sidewalk clearing. In these neighborhoods, there are elderly people, there are disabled people, and they're not out there clearing their sidewalks. It's very easy to get somebody to snowplow if you have a driveway, but very difficult to get someone to shovel your sidewalk. The city's sidewalk plows are inconsistent, and I can tell you that sometimes I walk down South Street, I can get to Marcy and I have to turn around and come back because I can't get off the sidewalk. There's a huge mound of snow. This happens on Junkins Avenue, happens on Islington, happens downtown. And I think that rather than the sidewalk plows just pushing the snow, it needs to be removed. It needs to be taken off. Those mounds of snow obstruct anyone trying to use the sidewalks. I've seen elderly people with their walkers on Middle Street walking in the street. I've seen students going to any of the schools walking in the street because of ice and snow on the sidewalk. And I wonder if there can be some collaboration amongst the business owners, residents, and the DPW, so that we see a plan in place for clearing the sidewalks. I would appreciate that, and I'm sure I'm not the first and the only one to bring this concern. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the public hearing section of the agenda. We have one item for public hearing tonight. It's regarding the ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance, Chapter 10, Article 5, Section 10.517, regarding rooftop appurtenances and other rooftop features.
Your Honor, what I asked to allow Rick Tainter, the planning director, before they open up the public hearing, to come down and just give a brief synopsis of what this public hearing is for and what the changes anticipated to accomplish.
Thank you. Welcome, Rick.
Good evening. Thank you. This is a modification to the dimensional requirements for the Gateway District that was adopted as part of the comprehensive zoning revision in December 2009 that became effective this year. And what it is designed to modify the building height requirements really slightly. It's a very modest modification. Currently, there is a provision in each zoning district for rooftop appurtenances to exceed the maximum height allowed for the district. And in the Gateway District, the maximum height for a building is 40 feet. It rises to 60 feet in certain situations. And the rooftop appurtenance height is 10 feet above that maximum height. So when the building is allowed to be 60 feet, the maximum rooftop appurtenance height is essentially 70 feet, so 10 feet above that. What the proposed amendment does is allow an enclosure for an elevator to be another 5 feet above the roof, so 15 feet above the roof. And the reason for that is to allow the elevator to be used for access to the roof. The rooftop appurtenance provision was designed to allow an elevator to get to the top floor, but it didn't have it didn't contemplate using the roof of a building for public access or for access from the occupants of the building. And this would actually help to create more value for the buildings that are created in the Gateway District, particularly where you have green roofs and you can use the building for outdoor access. So that's the primary thing, is the additional 5 feet for elevator enclosures. Also, related to this is allowing partial shelters like trellises and pergolas to go up to the height allowed for rooftop appurtenances. We define rooftop appurtenances very strictly in the ordinance to include, essentially, in addition to elevator enclosures, machinery, rooftop machinery such as HVAC systems and so forth. And this would allow trellises, pergolas, and elevator vestibules to go up to that same height, so 10 feet above the building height, provided that the total area of those things do not exceed 15% of the total roof height and that they're set back from the roof a distance at least equal to their height. And that's meant to limit the visual impact from surrounding areas. And the third change is to allow railings around rooftop access areas, rooftop use areas, to extend above the allowed structure height, not to the 10 feet, but to another 4 feet above the roof height, and that they be set back at least twice their height from the edge of the roof. So those are the changes. They're relatively modest, and they're just the primary purpose of these is to allow access to a roof.
Thank you, Rick. I would now like to declare the public hearing open. In the public hearing, you have the ability to speak for as long as you want on this particular topic. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on this issue? Mr. St. Laurent.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Bill St. Laurent, 253 Colonial Drive. I wasn't going to speak on this issue, but I recollect in past times where things have been allowed to extend on roofs to build higher, and we have to be careful here because we live in a city that has a lot of beautiful views, and people buy these homes and apartments and condos in places that after they buy them and then somebody builds something and restricts their view, kind of disappointing when they spent a lot of money. So I don't know, it sounds like it's just for appendages going up, and I don't see other floors or things, but he mentioned something else that could go up in there, maybe like a greenhouse or something like that. So we have to, when we do these types of changes, I think we have to be very careful how we word this and what it's going to look like for people in the city. Like I said, if we had an average city, most people are not looking for views, but in Portsmouth, a lot of people are looking for views. So be careful when these ordinances pass as to what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers for this issue for the public hearing? I declare the public hearing closed.
I think Councilor Coviello had a question.
Oh, shouldn't we wait till? Okay. Yes, Councilor Coviello.
Well, since this is the second reading, right? This is where we.
Second reading.
Can I ask Mr. Tanner a question?
Well, maybe when you
We
get to the
it.
actual
This
vote.
is just the
I'm
public
sorry.
hearing.
That's right.
I'm always getting
That's
tripped up by
okay.
that.
No problem.
Make them sit there for a while.
Okay, we move on to the portion of the agenda, consideration of resolutions and ordinances. We have the second reading of ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 5, Section 10.517 regarding rooftop appurtenances and other rooftop features. Do we have a motion to put this on the table?
Move to pass second reading and schedule third and final reading of proposed ordinance at our December 6th meeting.
Thank you,
Second.
Councilor Smith. Do we have a second from Councilor Coviello? Discussion from the council. Yes, Councilor Coviello.
Mr. Changer, in hearing the concerns of Mr. St. Laurent, perhaps it would be good to explain we have a permissive zoning ordinance, right? Is that what it is? That's how we describe it, whereas
Yes.
it's not explicitly, well, you describe it.
Yeah, well, that's true. The ordinance is designed to only allow those things that are specifically listed in the ordinance, so that this would not go beyond what it specifically states. And just to clarify one point, we should note that this is specifically limited to the Gateway District, which is the Lafayette Road from the Rye line to the beginning of the bypass. So it's a very narrow, and there were concerns early on about potentially including other areas. So it was very clearly limited to that area.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Councilor Kennedy.
Rick, maybe you could explain that, like when you say things have to be double back, what is the visual point? Where can you see it?
Well, if you were, I guess the best way to think of it is that if you're looking at the appurtenances that have to be set back their height from the edge of the roof. So if you had a 60-foot high building and you were adding 15 feet onto that building, it'd be 15 feet up and it'd be 15 feet back. So I believe you would be looking 75 feet, I think. Maybe an engineer on the board could tell me if I'm right, but I think it would be, if you'd have to be on the ground level 75 feet away from the building in order to see anything on the roof. Obviously, if you were on a second or third floor, you'd be able to see it more closely, but it's about that setback. So it's, and considering that all of these buildings will be on Route 1, you'll probably be able to see something on a lot on the other side of Route 1 from the building, but no closer than that. So you probably could see it coming up if you're driving up Route 1 from some distance, but as you get close to the building, you wouldn't be able to see it.
So to clarify for the public, this is only going to take place along Route 1?
Correct.
The Gateway District.
From where to where?
From the bypass to the Rye Town line, and the actual impact is 5 feet of additional height. Currently, we allow appurtenances 10 feet above the roof. This allows them 15 feet in certain cases.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any more discussion on this issue? Councilor Smith.
Thank you. Mr. Tainter, I know a lot of this came out from the original letter from Attorney Laughlin. Have you spoken to Attorney Laughlin on this since this, as we're getting here? Is this seem to really pull in the full spirit of what his letter and note?
Yes, this is actually adapted from an earlier proposal that I had actually made to the planning board, and it was some concern raised at the planning board level, and Attorney Laughlin went back and refined it for the specific needs of his client. So it was kind of narrowed down, and in particular brought back to limit it specifically to the Gateway District rather than going across the whole city, which did raise some concerns, particularly in the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Dwyer.
Sort of two comments. I think it's a terrific vote of confidence in the Gateway concept that people building on the Gateway District want to use the roof, and also that there would rightfully even be concerns about views. The idea that we will be remaking Route 1 in a way that people will be that appreciative of it. But I just, so that this doesn't come up in the future, it doesn't just apply, it applies right now to Route 1, but I know there's interest on this council in thinking of extending potentially the gateway, so it goes with the gateway concept.
Correct.
Just as a clarification.
And I think the concern, the interest is in converting other existing general business districts
That's
along
right.
the major corridors to gateway. So those are the types of places where it might apply in the future.
Right.
Any more discussion? Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a vote?
Call the question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The second consideration of resolutions and ordinances is the third and final reading of the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 1, Article 4, Section 1.404A1, Commissions and Authorities, Historic District Membership. May I have a motion to move this?
Move to pass third and final reading of proposed ordinance as
Second.
presented.
Thank you, Councilor Smith, and whoever you choose there to be the second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next portion of the agenda is the presentation and consideration of written communications and petitions. The first is a letter from Jill Attori from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation requesting permission to use Pierce Island for the 2011 Seacoast Safari CF Cycle for Life on Saturday, July 16, 2011, from 7:45 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Move to the city manager with power. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, discussion? Did you want, I'm
Just
sorry.
briefly, if I may. With this one and for other items that are coming up that are similar to these, it's going to be my intent to always ask the city manager in speaking, when they're putting their programs together, if they put up any signs directing arrows and so forth, that after the event, they make sure they have someone to go down and remove those signs. And if they don't, I may not be supporting them in future years to be allowed back in the city.
Duly noted. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The second item, item B, is a letter from Robin Normando requesting that the City Council publish the vision appraisal cards online.
Move to the city manager for a report back, as well as a cost analysis as well. Second.
Thank you, Council Smith and Councilor Lister. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. The third item, item C, is a letter from attorney Alec McEachran, Shanes and McEachran, PA, regarding request for license agreement, easement agreement, and amended private street easement agreement in connection 99 Hanover Street. Do we have a motion?
Move to authorize
Might I
this.
address this?
Yes. Do we have to have a motion first?
Well, why don't you see what the motion that the council's doing?
Move to authorize the city manager to proceed and execute and deliver the requested license agreements, easement agreements, and amended private street easement agreements, along with any modifications, further amendments necessary in connection with the 99 Hanover Street once these documents have been reviewed and recommended by the city attorney.
Is that okay?
I'd actually would ask the council to withdraw that motion, and I can explain why.
Okay.
Withdraw.
The developer in this case proposes a significant building at 99 Hanover Street, and for reasons unrelated to the city government at all, the developer got into a kind of a time crunch with respect to construction financing. For that reason, this request for easements and contract agreements and license came in last week on the council deadline. As you can see from your review, it's technical stuff. And when the staff looked at this material the next day, we realized that the documents that had been presented to you, because of the time crunch, frankly, were not in proper form. Among other problems, any easement that will be granted by the city requires a referral to the planning board and a report back. That hadn't happened. There is also probably one agreement that needs to be amended, which isn't even mentioned here, and that's the private street agreement, which the city has with the developer. Therefore, in an effort to resolve these problems and cooperate with the developer as much as possible so that this matter can proceed expeditiously, I have a motion which I would like to recommend. And the motion is actually self-explanatory, and I hope once the council hears it, you'll see why it's being offered this way, and someone will make the motion. This is what I would recommend, Your Honor. Moved that the correspondence dated November 18th, 2010, from Attorney McCacken regarding Parade Office LLC be referred to the Planning Board with a request that a report be issued back to the city manager. And be it further moved that the city manager be authorized to negotiate, execute, and deliver any necessary documents required to respond to the request of Parade Office LLC in accordance with the report to be received from the Planning Board. That would be the motion. If it would have passed, then the matter will be forwarded to the Planning Board, where it's really, the Planning Board is better suited to study something like this than the City Council. To begin with, it involves plans, it involves at least 2 different site plans, matters which have been to the Planning Board. And once the Planning Board is acted, then the authority required under the ordinance will be satisfied, and if the Council gives the City Manager the authority to react to what the Planning Board determines, then this matter can be moved along really as quickly as it could be.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit perplexed because there were some overhangs and signs on public streets that technically come back here, and I have a problem with some overhangs, especially during the rainstorm, dripping on people if it doesn't go over and where it lands on the street, and that especially in, there's one particular overhang that I have a problem with. If you're riding in a wheelchair, you get drenched. So I guess my concern is that it doesn't come back for final approval to the City Council when we technically do that stuff on streets. So I am concerned with that motion.
There is no question that there's a better procedure to be followed if more time is allowed. In this particular case, as I said, due to circumstances in no way created by the city government, the developer got into a time crunch and a bind. The protection, I think, that it will be in place here with regard to these easements is that the Planning Board will have an opportunity to study it before anything happens.
Councilor Dwyer?
Well, and I presume it would also be that we would have a report back on what some of the disposition or the discussion is because of that. But I also have a question, because this has been in our packet. I've at least received at least one question from people asking about what this development will be, and I know there's nobody here. I don't believe there's anybody here to answer that. And I think there was the question that I received was from somebody who has a residence in that area, what the intention is. Will it be condos? Will it be apartments? How many? That kind of thing. Now, I know that's not what we normally ask when we get a license, but perhaps when we get a report back from the Planning Board, just because members of the public have started asking about this very visible property and people are aware that something is happening there, we could just have a little more information about that.
Councilor Kennedy?
And I guess we always, we have people that are trying to get to the historical. You have people that are trying to get planning, and they're on time crunches, and we don't make allotments to go beyond for them. So I guess I'm confused why we're so worried about making allotments for this one individual when we don't do it for others. If you don't get your time frame in, sometimes you can even, I know there was a panic from a friend over a parking issue, trying to meet the deadline so that he could rent a commercial space for his business because he had to move, and it was very stressful. But we didn't make any allotments for him for his stress and and whatnot. So I guess I'm having a hard time not following protocol and setting a precedent that we don't follow protocol. So I guess I'll be voting against the motion.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councilor Spear and Councilor Kennedy are opposed. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is reports and communications from city officials. I'll turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first item that I wanted to talk to you about was the report back from Conservation Commission regarding the Creek Farm Trail. Basically, the Conservation Commission took up this referral, and they're very enthusiastic and supportive of the concept, and voted unanimously to recommend the City Council accept the invitation to move ahead with the properties that have been described for a trail. If you review the correspondence from the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, it really is, as they describe, going to be a process with many stakeholders, and they'd be willing to help coordinate it. I think it basically is a good opportunity to move forward, to work with them to see how this would all come about. And I would recommend the City Council accept the proposal to move ahead in developing a concept for a trail from the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, which would be partly on city property along Little Harbor, as well as land at the Creek Farm and the Wentworth Coolidge Mansion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy and Coviello. Do we have discussion? Yes, Councilor Lister.
Could I just ask, is there information if people from the public wanted to see where this was? And
the idea will be to develop that concept and then kind of bring it forward. Right now, that's the whole invitation, is to try to, to bring all these property owners together and try to figure out a concept and have so I'm sure, and I will urge that there's a public meeting, on that.
Yes, Councilor
Just
Hamadi.
comment, I know this area very well. I used to live down there, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And my dog used to take off, and I'd wander all through it. So these trails will be really beautiful on Little Harbor and Sagamore Creek.
Do we have any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Your Honor. The next item is a license request from Witcher Builders regarding 111 Market Street, and my memorandum has basically outlined that Witcher Builders seeks a license to encumber the Sterry Street sidewalk and to hang staging over the Market Street sidewalk to complete repairs to the structure at 111 Market Street. A little background, Witcher Builders is presently engaged in repair work at this location with scaffolding erected on both Sterry Street and Market Street side of the building pursuant to an encumbrance permit issued by the Inspections Department. I've attached a copy of that encumbrance permit. The Market Street scaffolding is being removed from the sidewalk at the end of the week in order to accommodate one of the owners of the retail during the holiday season.
I'm just recusing myself from this.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you had a question. Okay. Witcher Builders is requesting a license for 3 months to permit the existing scaffolding to remain on Sterry Street in order to complete work. Conditions in the existing encumbrance permit would be carried over, including the obligation to maintain safe pedestrian passage along with additional obligations relative to the vehicle passage, insurance, and restoration. The building at 111 Market Street is owned by a condominium association, and there are concerns with regard to the license initially arose from one of the other owners regarding the impact of the scaffolding. After many meetings with the builder and the individual owners, a written agreement was reached with regards to construction activities. The hanging staging on Market Street of the side of the building and continuation of the staging on Sterry Street side of the building constitutes the key elements of the agreement and would be incorporated in the license terms. In addition, the contractors agreed to manage and limit construction vehicles and deliveries so long as to avoid disruption to the business in the area during the holiday season. So the individual business that had concerns, his concerns have been alleviated because they have indicated that they will work with him during the holiday season.
so
Would
moved.
anyone like to make a motion? Thank you, Councilor Smith.
Yeah, I'll make the motion for the city manager to enter into a license agreement with Witcher Builders consisting of terms outlined to facilitate the construction activities at 111 Market Street. Second.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Councilor Lister. Yes, Councilor Smith.
Thank you. I've been in discussions with some of the owners of the buildings, and this is something they have been working out because there was some confusion between the owners when they were trying to work on the much-needed construction of the building. So I'm glad to see this has come forward to alleviate some of the owners of the building's dilemmas.
Councilor Kennedy.
Given the fact that this is happening during the winter, and that is a sidewalk that traditionally gets plowed by the sidewalk machine in the city, who's responsible for making sure where the scaffolding is cleaned off, and how is that getting cleaned up? Would it be the builders?
It would be the builder's responsibility.
Okay.
And we
that's
will-
in the agreement?
Well,
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Counsel
Abstain.
Coviello is abstaining. Thank you, the motion passes.
That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's some questions relative to any other items on the agenda that I've listed. I'd be more than happy to answer those. Your Honor, thank you. I know that people were wanted to, as a result of our retreat on Saturday, one of the items that came up was the discussion of the farmers market at the location here at City Hall. I indicated to you that in the next couple of weeks I will be meeting with the Seacoast Growers Association to talk about the concerns of the individuals that live here at the cottage apartments, and that I will report back to the City Council of my meeting. And then if we are not able to come to some kind of accommodation, we then can further discuss if there's a need for the council to look at other locations.
Thank you, City Manager Bohenko.
That's all I have, Your Honor. And
The next item on the agenda is informational items. We have in our packets an update on the 99 Bow Street construction site, and the second item is the events listing. Yes, Council Kennedy.
When is the 99 Bow Street memorandum go into effect?
It would be, the extension would happen, and what I've asked to be done on this is I'm not giving a blanket 3-month extension. I'm asking for a month-to-month extension, so that in the memorandum, as you can see, we have added a lot of conditions, and instead of just doing a blanket extension into the spring, we're going to do it every 30 days. And if people have concerns, let me know.
And the only reason I'm asking is because this morning there was no flagger, but there was a guy standing out there moving people around the one-way street back down because they had a truck out in the middle, and I noticed that some of that stuff's in the extension. It wasn't completed today.
Well,
so.
you know what? What time was that?
6:59.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. We will talk to them again.
Any more discussion about either of the informational items? Okay, we move on to the Mayor Farini's portion of the agenda. We have some appointments to be voted. The first is Eric Gregg to the Economic Development Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The second is Todd Henley to the Recreation Board. Do
So
we have a
moved.
motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The third one is Corey Sermanian
So moved.
for the Recreation Board. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We also regretfully have one resignation from Linda King from the Pierce Island Committee.
Move to accept with regrets and a letter to thank her for her service.
Thank you. Second, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is miscellaneous unfinished business. Is there anything anyone would like to bring before the council? Council Spear.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have 2 items under miscellaneous. The first, I wanted to clarify something we had been discussing during the retreat regarding written materials that people bring to council meetings. And we had talked about Rule 9. And I decided to look up Rule 9. So it's all in your packet. Every 2 weeks it's in your packet. And the Rule 9 actually is rather narrow in scope. I'll read it. It reads, every motion shall be reduced to writing if the chair so directs or if any member of the council requests it. That's it. And so you can see that written materials, it really pertains to if someone wants to bring a motion. Someone on the council can request that it be in written form. And I think, therefore, I know we should all make a good attempt to put things into the packet because we can read it ahead of time, but that doesn't preclude anyone from handing anything out during the meeting. So I wanted to bring that up.
I would like to ask that we discuss this at the next meeting when the mayor is here.
Sure.
I think he,
Okay.
I think, had some feelings about that, so perhaps we should wait until he's here
that's fine.
to comment on it, so bring it up at the next meeting.
Try to remember, because
Pardon me?
I'll try to remember. Just help me remember. And then at a second item, it had to do with one of the public comment speakers today on the holiday parking. And I guess the parking committee has been looking at this for the month of December and a week in November. And one of the things that I learned in the planning group's focus group on metering and parking and retailing, one of the motivations for having metering in place is to increase turnover for customers. And it occurred to me that even though it might seem counterintuitive, you want to save people money during the shopping season so people spend more money in the stores, the case might actually be that the metering encourages more customers to go to the stores, and therefore it might be a better idea to discontinue the practice. I'm not, obviously it's under miscellaneous business, I'm not asking for a motion, but I thought, and this season's already moving forward, and I understand that, but I think it's something the parking committee could consider for next time in terms of looking at parking in the bigger picture. So, that's it.
Councilor Smith, would you like to comment on that?
I'm happy to. It's been a practice of the City Council to have free parking for many, many years, over 15 years. It does not mean that parking enforcement does not continue. It does continue. It is just a goodwill that the city has always provided to our visitors and neighbors who come to the downtown area. It has proven to be extremely successful. People really appreciate it. It does not mean that parking enforcement goes away. It does not mean that people can stay at a place or wipe off the chalk or have those practices that we know have been done. But it's always been a goodwill outreach by the city. It is something that's budgeted for year after year, and it's always been extremely successful.
Anyone else have anything to bring before the council before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.